Brooklyn Nine-Nine, the famous TV show about a young Jacob Peralta, an immature cop becoming a mature man, with a lovable cast of Stone Cold Rosa Diaz, massive family man Terry Jeffords, obsessive best friend Charles Boyle, Class A personality Amy Santiago, and the best character, Captain Raymond Holt. I do not count worst character Gina. The point of this video, and every video I add to this series, will be to analyze relationships and what they've done wrong in said relationships. This episode is dedicated to Amy and Jake. I'm obviously an expert as I am married and not divorced, and hopefully the things I criticize can help viewers also cultivate better relationships. For the purposes of this video, I'll include some episodes I don't necessarily see anything wrong with, just to establish where in the timeline we are and what's happened on the track to get there. I'll ignore some issues, mostly the ones that don't directly involve something that Amy or Jake could have done better, and I'll hyper-focus on others, the big mistakes they make. Obviously, spoilers ahead for Brooklyn Nine-Nine. We'll start with perhaps the most important episode, Johnny and Dora. This is where their relationship starts, where they get together, and which started this entire track. I can't criticize this episode. In fact, it's incredibly cute and sweet. Literally the next episode, New Captain, is mostly a continuation of them getting together. I could criticize their establishment of barriers, and then the immediate destruction of said barriers, but personally I don't see a problem with that, as they both seem comfortable with the speed they're going. My main issue with this episode is them deciding to break it off so quick into the relationship.
What do you want to do then? Go back to being colleagues?
Yeah, maybe that's what it needs to be right now.
Any relationship I've observed that starts with a back and forth of together, then apart, is always tumultuous at best. Never start a relationship by ending your relationship. This is resolved later in the episode, and they get back together, but this is certainly outside the norm in most long-term relationships. In The Funeral, they're told to break up by their new antagonist captain known as the Vulture, or else Peralta will be demoted back to beat cop. In Halloween Part 3, we see Peralta hurt Amy's feelings by yelling at her boobs when she's upset about not being picked for her team.
But since you're not, I will defeat you!
Obviously, Peralta should not have done this. Trust your partner unless they give you a reason to not trust them. Don't be a doormat for a cheater or a liar, but don't accuse without at least some good reason. In The Mattress, we see Amy causing a scene over Jake's terrible garbage mattress. I'd argue if they're sleeping together consistently enough, moving in together should definitely be something they need to start considering at the very least, but the main point I want to criticize in this episode is this scene.
Okay, well, to me, it sounds like you're saying I'm not worth it. So I'm gonna go sleep in my grown-up mattress that I bought this century, and you're not invited.
The one where they're out buying mattresses and Jake says he doesn't think it's worth it. Completely normal for someone like Jake, who struggles with spending and has very little money. Amy could take this maturely and attempt to convince him that it is worth it. Instead, she says, well, you saying it isn't worth it is saying I'm not worth it. Absolutely not the right call. Absolutely a stupid thing to say. She then stops staying over at his place. Why wouldn't they just stay over at hers? In the same episode, we see Jake bringing up new issues into an already existing issue. Namely, that she hasn't told her mom that they're dating.
You're not even taking this argument seriously.
All right, you want to get serious? How come you haven't told your mom that we're dating? Yeah, that's right. I saw the text she sent you about setting you up with some dude named Gary.
I haven't told her because I haven't had the chance. Jake, it's not about you. Look, the minute I tell her that I'm dating someone, she's gonna call me all the time and ask me a million annoying questions.
Wow, it sounds like such a huge drag.
Because she'd ask about your relationship? For someone like Amy, who has a lot of stock in her parents' thoughts of her, this is a very big deal. You are sleeping on each other's mattresses, it's time to tell your mom. Now, this brings us to the biggest and most constant issue of Peraltiago. Their refusal to compromise. By the end, it's Jake who must change his mind and buy a new mattress. This is a behavior that shows up in almost every one of their conflicts, and we'll come back to it. Naturally, the mattress becomes a moot point because they move in together not too long after that. In The Cruise, which is primarily a Doug Judy, awesome guy, nice music, episode, has a small issue. Jake wants to stay in the room with his sweetheart and do nothing. Amy wants to do literally everything on the ship.
Oh, the cruise offers 77 activities, and I signed us up for 76 of them.
Now, they could compromise and just do some of the events, but nah. Barring the Doug Judy interruptions, Jake says they're going to do all of the remaining events. Starting with a Dancing for Widows class? Why would Amy want to do this? And yes, cruises make it very clear what activity you're going to. In maximum security, Amy goes undercover in prison to get information from an inmate. Jake does make a mistake, and he doesn't trust his beau to handle things, constantly calling her out for silly reasons because he's worried about her.
I know, but it wasn't a good time. She was holding a 20-pound weight. That's basically Thor's hammer, babe.
The issue is, Amy is no better. She doesn't respect his worry, and in fact puts herself in unreasonable danger just to prove a point.
What the hell do you think you're doing, huh? Showing my unborn baby how an ass gets kicked.
Which justifies how Jake has been acting that whole time. Naturally, again, Jake simply pulls himself from the case. In Coral Palms Part 3, Amy shoots Jake. That sounds a lot worse than it is. Jake wants her to shoot him, but the only reason I'm bringing it up is that it's actually quite good. The episode starts with them struggling to communicate non-verbally, completely normal after long periods of separation, and her shooting him is when they finally figure out how to get back on the same track. This is an applaudable moment. In Mr. Santiago, Jake meets Amy's father for the first time. Amy is obviously close with her dad, so this is particularly nerve-wracking for Jake. He wants his approval, wants Amy's dad to like him, which is good. Parental approval isn't needed, but it's always best when you get along with who your significant other gets along with. Naturally, this point is thrown out and ruined for a shoehorned, I'm a woman and I don't need my dad's permission to date anyone. Also, you suck, Jake, for wanting my dad to like you, and actually wanting to be a part of my family. You suck.
I wanted his approval, but he says I'll never be good enough for you.
What the hell?
I know, right? Tell him he's wrong.
No, I'm upset with you.
That's right, go get him, Tiger.
I'm also upset with you. What is this, 1950? I can't date someone unless I have my father's approval.
Oh, obviously, you can...
You guys act like this is your decision to make. Like, the woman doesn't even exist in this equation. Well, this woman?
Wait, Amy, shut up.
Excuse me?
I mean, I'm so sorry. You were making a totally valid point about gender equality, but I just thought of something really important, so I'm gonna hang up on you, okay? Love you, bye.
Sometimes your partner does things for you without asking. It's important to make it clear you at least appreciate the attempt or the gesture, even if the result isn't something you necessarily wanted. In The Fugitive, Part 1, they make a bet on whose apartment they're going to move into, and I bring up this episode because this was a really good way to handle it. They each had their reasons, and they're both competitive, so they make it into a composition with a relative net positive, them moving in together. I think it's handled awesomely, and it's a really healthy way to decide who's moving into whose. In Chasing Amy, I again have nothing but compliments. Amy is worried about taking the sergeant's test, and her responses are extreme and I mean this in the best possible way, unhinged. Jake goes through a lot of effort, proving he knows her really well, and she leaves it because it freaks her out on the test. In the end, she's really worried about how it'll affect her and Jake. He should have been upfront about this. And Jake says not to worry about it, because he's not worried about it. While not the most healthy process, it still was handled not terribly, especially on Jake's end. In The Big House Part 2, Jake is in prison, and he constructs a fake Amy out of mashed potatoes. That's it, that's all I'm going to say. In Halloween, Jake uses a heist to propose. It's the cutest and sweetest proposal I've seen in fiction in a long time. Showing how much Jake knows Amy, Charles faints, Jake says he's decided to ask it over a crossword, and just... ugh. I won't gush on it, but it's important for the timeline, and I love it. In Two Turkeys, Jake's parents and Amy's parents meet. From the get-go, both parents do terribly. Jake's parents aren't ready, Amy's parents bring a whole different turkey for reasons. The parents proceed to become terribly competitive, chaos ensues, but we're not talking about the parents. Jake and Amy both collectively defend their parents and blame the other's parents. This makes so little sense, as Amy knows her parents' weaknesses, and Jake knows how much his parents aren't conventionally good parents. Instead, they argue about how their parents are awesome. I'm not going to say this can be done in any particular way, because it can't. Just don't do it. In The Puzzle Master, an idol of Amy's shows up. He's very attractive and has a lot in common with Amy, so Jake gets naturally jealous. As a small disclaimer, there is nothing wrong with jealousy. Jake is painted as the bad guy for not trusting the non-cop with what they should do, even though it's Amy who sides with the guy who is not a cop, and for being jealous. I would agree that his jealousy is unwarranted, but we come to find out that they had a discussion about the muscle that makes a V on his thigh. They should not be having that conversation. Puzzle Bro shouldn't be talking about it to a taken woman, and the taken woman should shut it down if it comes up. So Jake is right in being jealous, and justified in his concern. Naturally, you should set your own boundaries, but if one partner is very clearly already jealous, talking about something like that should be way past the boundary line and should never even be considered. In Jake and Amy, we're back to good things. It's the wedding day, everything's going wrong, bomb threat, but they handle it pretty well. No conflict with each other, only with outside forces. And this isn't about outside forces. Fuck outside forces. Alright. This is the episode. The reason I even considered making this entire series. Case-cation. Amy wants to have kids. Jake doesn't. And yes, they should have talked about this way before getting married. But I thought we'd play a little game, give you some options on what you think will happen. 1. They talk it out, come to a compromise, and decide what to do in the future based on what they both want. 2. Jake refuses to discuss it and says they have to do what he wants or they're through. 3. Amy says he has to come over to her side or she's going to find a new husband. Did you guess 1? Dude, I wish. Did you guess 2? You're not very good at patterns. Did you guess 3? That's right. If he didn't change his mind, and the show portrays it very bad if he doesn't, she would have found a husband and said, "Oh well, I'm a foul."
You're still young. We have plenty of time.
I know, but I don't want to wait around for 2 years and then have you decide you don't want kids, because I don't want to start over at 38.
Start over.
This episode is so unfair to Jake. The entire episode screams that Amy does not even begin to care about the person she is married to, that she doesn't care about his feelings, she doesn't care what he wants, the only thing that matters is what she wants. It's so disgusting and hurtful, and there's no compromise to be had when Amy wants something. None of his reasons matter because she wants kids. In an ideal situation, you'd come to a compromise, as at this point it's kinda assumed you like each other enough not to throw it away like that. To be transparent, Jake lists all of his reasons for not wanting kids in a quote-unquote structured debate that Amy sets up.
According to a study I read, people with kids were less likely to report that they were happy in their lives than people without kids. Now, call me crazy, but being happy tends to make me feel pretty happy. I just don't want to lose what we already had. Work. We both work way too much. Why bother having kids if you never get to spend time with them? I mean, I love my job and I know you love yours, and I don't think it's fair for either of us to have to sacrifice that. I had a crappy dad. I know what happens when you mess up as a parent. It's not great.
All of his reasons are completely justified and sensible. His last point is backed by studies. Children are statistically likely to have a personality very similar to their least favorite parent. All of Amy's can be easily argued against, yet sadly Jake is woefully unprepared for a literal debate about having kids. In the end, because Jake's positions are painted as bad and dumb, Jake changes his mind after a life and death situation. He is essentially forced to change his mind, because screw what he wants. And at the end he says, "But we don't have to start right away, right?"
But we don't have to start trying right away, right? I mean, I don't know that I'm all the way there yet.
No, of course not. Whenever we're both ready.
And she says, "Not until we're both ready." Then what the absolute fuck was this entire episode, Santiago? It makes me so mad. Moving on. In The Bimbo, Amy messes up again. Jake mentions directly that he enjoys being underestimated and that her parents don't think he's smart enough to learn a new language. It's led to him being able to understand, quote, all the hurtful things they say about him, unquote.
I mean, Amy's parents look down on me. They talk about me right in front of my face in Spanish because they don't think I'm smart enough to learn another language. But I've been taking classes, and now I can understand all the hurtful things they've been saying.
And how did that help?
Well, now I know they think I'm short, and I was able to do some research and find that 1940 census that proves I'm above average in height.
For 1940.
Why are you letting your parents shit-talk your husband, Amy? Never let your parents talk bad about your significant other. Shut that shit down. Tell them to cut it out because they're here long-term no matter what they want. Frankly, your parents should have relatively little fucking business in your relationships anyway, so long as you're happy. Unless you are actively damaging yourself or others, your parents' job is to support, not criticize. In Cinco de Mayo, I have some compliments and some complaints. As another heist episode, it's very goofy, but Holt proposes they tell Jake she's pregnant with fake tests and sonograms. Amy doesn't even consider it, which is good. Don't lie about very important things. This does not undo casecation, Santiago. In Ding Dong, Amy and Jake start really trying for a baby. Now we're on to season 8. I've watched very little of it, but the show ends with Jake quitting the force to become a stay-at-home dad. Amy is very concerned and is very open with the fact that he doesn't need to, but it's a decision he's sticking to, as he wants to be a good dad, unlike his own dad. My own misgivings about the final season's writing aside, it's actually a pretty good ending to their relationship. They don't have a bad relationship by any means, as usually they have a good rapport and communicate just fine. They may be competitive, but that's completely fine in relationships, it just depends on the people. Final rating, 8 Type A personalities out of 10. I hope the tips in the video helped you in your future or current relationships. I just want more people to keep relationships happy and healthy rather than seeing them fail after the slightest of issues. If you have any relationship requests, leave them in the comments and I'll do what I like. In the meantime, I hope everybody has a great day. Until next time.